is Kate, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Meizon Church this morning. Or if it's not morning, if you're listening along in the afternoon or the evening, I still welcome you, and I'm so glad that you've chosen to spend some time with us worshipping our Saviour. So, having welcomed you, if you are a child and you're elementary school age, I'm actually now going to send you away, but only so you can go and do some cool activities and some fun stuff with Miss Kylan. So please feel free, if you are in kindergarten to grade 5, to go down to the back now where Miss Kylan is waiting for you. Okay, so on our screen, you will see our digital Connect card. Pops up every week. If you're in the front row, you can probably scan that QR code pretty easily. If you're right at the back, you might need to zoom in, but feel free to do so, because we love it when you use that Connect card to get in touch with us. Whether you have a prayer request, maybe you want to sign up for an event, or maybe you simply want to say hi. We love to hear from you, so please do scan that code. Okay, so as Christmas approaches, we at Meizon are adopting a family. We've identified a local family who we would like to bless this Christmas season by providing them with lots of different items that they need. And to see a list of those items, you can go to meizonchurch.com/serve, and you can sign up there to buy. There are various different things on the list. I had a look the other day, so you can pick some of those things up, and then you can actually bring them along to church. There's a box out the back. It's a big box with a sign on it that says adopt a family, just like the picture up there. So you're welcome to drop off things for that next time you're in church. Another way that we are helping and serving our local community in Gainesville this Christmas is with Serve GNV on Christmas Eve. And I'm kind of excited about this. It's a little bit like being Santa. What we're going to do is in the morning on Christmas Eve, if you come to the morning service afterwards, we're going to put together some kind of care packages, these little bags with some treats and things inside them. And then after our evening service on Christmas Eve, we're going to take those bags out and we're going to deliver them to people who are serving the community by working on Christmas Eve. So that's our chance to thank them and to bless them. And again, if you go to meizonchurch.com/serve, you can see a list of the items that we're collecting to put into those bags. And those you can also drop those off. There's a separate box. Don't mix the boxes up. There's a separate box out. They're very clearly labeled, so I think you'll be able to find the correct one. Okay. I know that you guys at Meizon are very generous, and you're always giving time, maybe giving material items like we've just asked for to bless our local community. And I know that you're generous financially with your giving as well, and that's what enables our church to keep going. So if you would like to make a financial contribution to Meizon, you can go to our website, meizonchurch.com, and you can give online. You can text $ and the amount you want to give to 84321 and select Meizon Church. Or if you have cash or a check, whatever that is, then you can drop that in the box on the back on your way out, or next time you come on the way in. If you need any help with online giving, do let somebody know. You can speak to Drake, Kevin, or Miranda, although, honestly, I'd go with Miranda. I imagine if you speak to Drake or Kevin, I'm pretty sure they'll just say, hey, Miranda's over there. So anyway, yeah. If you do need that help, though, seriously, do let someone know, and we'll help you out with that. And I'm now going to hand over to Pastor Drake, who's continuing our Christmas series, Some Assembly Required.
morning, Meizon. My name is Drake. I'm one of the pastors here. I'm really excited that you decided to join us this morning, or as Kate mentioned, Wednesday afternoon on your commute back home, and you're listening to the podcast. We're so glad you decided to join us and to listen to us. There's a lot of things that you get to do with your time. We all know that there's not enough time in the day or in the week. The fact that you've chosen to be here to learn and to live into community is really awesome, and so we thank you for being here. One elephant in the room, I did have hair last week. If you're new, for the first time, and you didn't know that I had hair last week, I had hair last week. And I went and I got basically, somebody went around calling me Travis Kelsey, and they asked about, is Taylor going to be coming along? Referring to Brent, my husband. But unfortunately, he doesn't sing quite half as good as Taylor. But then I decided that, it's a buzz cut. I can touch this up myself with a number 3. And I thought I was going to do that. And it wasn't actually a length number 3. It was like the blade number 3, which is not the same thing. So I went like this, and I felt like the little head from Toy Story with the walking legs, like maybe Britney Spears, as one person said about my haircut. So I do still have hair, and it will grow back, which is good, right? So I just thought I would just acknowledge that. Someone did ask me if it helps me lift weights better, and the answer is yes. Yes, it does. We're glad that you've decided to be here. I figured I would address that elephant before we got too much further into this conversation. Well, this week, we're in our second week of our series, Some Assembly Required, and Some Assembly Required is something that we're all used to seeing this time of year. We're all used to hearing about it. I don't know if you remember, nobody really watches cable television anymore. I feel like most people just watch Netflix or Hulu or Prime Video, or I guess TikTok if you've only like 30-second amounts of content that you can digest at a time. But if you remember any of those TV commercials, there used to be always at the end, some assembly required, shipping and handling not included. Remember? Some assembly required. It's like that guy's voice. Well, some assembly required is something that we see all the time this time of year, because all of the gifts that we get, for the most part, unless they're a physical, like a tech product, like a phone or a camera or something like that might not need assembly, but pretty much everything else needs some sort of assembly. Some sort of assembly. In fact, I know that at least one of you, if not all of you, have looked at the other person in your relationship and said, "How did you forget the batteries?" Right? Because the batteries weren't included either, not just the shipping handling, and there was some assembly required. Or if you remember that, and they still make things in it, and it's normally things you buy like from the dollar store, that plastic packaging that you try and open something, you try to cut it out with scissors, but it just seems to never open. You tear it and you end up cutting yourself because you're going like this on the box and you can't get the stupid plastic off. Or the bane of everyone's existence, who remembers the taped down plastic zip tie or plastic twist ties with the metal on the inside around the little like plastic popsicle stick thing? You remember those? Okay, so I was realizing that I hadn't seen anything really like that in my adult life. And it was pretty much reserved for Christmas and for birthdays. And I was wondering, well, whatever happened to these things, these little twist ties, these little popsicle sticks? Turns out they still do package things with them. And I Googled it, and kind of my heart hurt. It was cheap plastic toys from China or from Japan. It was the easiest way to package them, the most cost-effective way, and they wouldn't move when shipping. And I thought, thanks, Mom and Dad, for the cheap plastic toys. I really appreciate that. But packaging is just part of this assembly, right? You get it open, and then you get the instructions. I was thinking about the fact that we had a white elephant Christmas party on Friday, and one person involved in the party may or may not be a staff member's child, always gets the worst white elephant gift. The worst one. And the good news is that at least last year it wasn't my gift that was the worst one. This year it was my gift. That went into this, this pile of things. Last year, I decided it would be funny to gift a bunch of Chicken Soup for the Soul books, the person who got those really loved them, actually. And then I thought it would be funny to gift a few Joel Osteen books, and the person who got that did not appreciate the Joel Osteen book. And last year, the individual whom I'm talking about got a chandelier. She's not Sia, so she didn't want to swing from it, but thank you for the couple of laughs that I got on that one. But she got a chandelier, and she hated the chandelier. Like she tried to get everyone to take this chandelier, and I don't know what happened to it, but I do know that she hated it so much that this year when we got the invites for the party, they said you can bring any gift you want for the white elephant, but no chandeliers. I was going to bring a chandelier, so so I'm glad that they put that in there. And so then my gift gets picked up by this person, and I thought, great, they're going to get the worst gift again. They open the gift. Mind you, this is a child. Teenager, preteen even. I'm not really sure actually what you would label her as, but now you know the gender, so you can probably, and you can see where I'm looking, so you can figure out whose kid it is. And she opens the bag, which, mind you, we had one grocery bag from a Walmart trip that day, and we pulled it tight, and then Erin was so lovely, and she had some gift bags in the closet, and so it was in a happy birthday gift bag wrapped in a Walmart gift bag, which everyone knows the best presents come in bags that are, tied on the top. She goes to open this thing, and she opens it up, and she looks at it, and she instantly, starts laughing, but also visibly crying. It was like that emoji, except I'm not really, and the problem is the emoji, you always know that someone's trying to, laugh at something. For her, we couldn't tell if she was laughing or she was actually crying or both. And I think we determined that it was probably both because she received a roll of, drum roll please, 12-foot plastic peel and stick chrome trim. Automotive trim. So Kevin is going to put it on the vibe because he was nice and let her take his gift. But she got the worst gift. And all I could think about, even though it was so hilarious that she got plastic, chrome, peel and stick, automotive trim. 12 feet, mind you. She could make her bed all blinged up or something, All I could think about was the fact that I was giving this talk and that she would have to try and figure out how to open the plastic package without cutting herself because it was probably cheap plastic chrome trim, just like the toys I got when I was growing up. But we're all used to this time of year. We're all used to packaging, and packaging is just part of the assembly. And then you open it up, and then you've got directions. Now, thing is, there are two types of people in this world when it comes to directions. There are two types, and only two types. If we were to expand this to a broader perspective than just Christmas, and we'll do that just for a second because we're pretty close. The closest IKEA is in Jacksonville, okay? Let's use IKEA. Let's use adult things, not just toys, okay? You go to IKEA. You and your better half are looking at everything in the IKEA, and you're so excited about this new, let's say, bookshelf that you picked out at IKEA, and you get it home, and you look at the box, and you're either the person who says, all right, let's get this open, let's get the directions out, let's figure out how to put this together, and not only do you take the directions out, but you are in love with those directions. You love putting the thing together because you love being methodical. You like step by step by step by step, right? Directions, 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 directions. The fact of the matter is, most times in relationships, the other person is not the same way. They're not the person that likes to read the directions and figure out how to put it together step by step by step by step. They're the person who says, I can see the picture on the box. I know how to put it together. I know exactly. I don't need directions. I don't need steps. I know exactly how to put it together just by looking at the picture on the box. You see, both of these people, though, have a problem. One is mostly, mind you, it's the person who pretends that they know what they're doing. The person who pretends that they know what they're doing will not admit that they don't know what they're doing. They're going to over and over again prove that they don't know what they're doing when they have one shelf affixed to the wrong side and they put parts C and parts A together instead of A and B or C and D because they don't need the directions. They're going to put one screw in, they're going to realize, holy moly, that screw was just a little bit too big and it went through the other side of the bookshelf. Some of you are nodding your heads because you've done this. You've had this argument because there's an argument that's coming between these two people in a relationship. Why can't you just look at the directions, right? The person who doesn't look at the directions won't admit that they don't know what they're doing. And the person who has the directions is having a hard time seeing the vision that the person who won't look at the directions does, right? So The person who has the directions is not confident in their own ability to do it without directions, or do it at all, really. That's why they're reading the directions so point by point by point by point. And then there's the other person who's so confident in their ability to do it, but won't ever ask for help and will not look at the directions. And both of those people are probably extremes, right? Both of those people, we tend to, weirdly enough, we mostly see extremes when it comes to IKEA furniture, right? Flat box furniture store, we see the extremes of people. There are two people. There's the one who won't admit that they don't know what they're doing and pretend like they do because they see the vision from the picture on the box. And there's the one who, when they open that thing, the first thing they do is get out the directions, and they have problems even thinking that they're even going to get it done, maybe. It might take them hours to do it. Now, it's going to take both people hours, just for different reasons. If you were to look at my relationship between my husband and I did ask him if it was okay to use him as a sermon illustration. Which one do you think I am? I'm definitely the one that looks at the picture on the box. You see, for the last several months, we've been living in our tiny home. And if you didn't know, we are in a tiny home. We have a pull-behind 34-foot Avion that we renovated. We bought in the spring of this year, and we renovated because I can just look at the picture on the box. We renovated to be the place that we live now, our home. And we absolutely love it. Our dogs love it. It's a wonderful community. Brent is an honorary retired old lady. All of his friends are named like Mary and Marge and Helen, and they do laundry together, and he's the only one that doesn't have big old glasses. But when we were renovating this tiny home, Brent would look at me, and I had him doing the waterproof backing in the bathroom. Right, so he was having to put the mud on the wall and then put this backing on and then scrape the mud out. And I remember when we were first starting, we used to get in so many arguments over this tiny home. Not stupid tiny home, I was going to say that, but it's not stupid. It's actually cool, pretty cool. We were putting this thing together because he would always say, well, can't you just show me how to do it? And I eventually got to a point, like about 3 months into the project, where I would just look at him and say, okay, you look at me, you ask me how to do it, and I'm going to tell you that I don't know how to do it. I just have the audacity and the background to pretend that I know how to do it. Now, sure enough, we did get this thing done, but there were all these arguments because I had the vision and the confidence to get this thing done, but I didn't know how to do it. I just had some general knowledge and some general background. And Brett, on the other hand, is the one who wanted to follow all of the directions and didn't really necessarily have the confidence. Now, I will tell you that I didn't do any of the painting because Brent has the technical ability to do things like that, right? So there are places in life and situations where both people work really, really well and work really well together. But again, we tend to see two extremes when it comes to, well, some assembly required. When you have to put something together for yourself, it can be difficult. Whether it's a trampoline that the Bruchert family had to put together, and I bet they had the same kind of arguments, whether it's a tiny home or it's 12 foot of chrome trim, a lot of the arguments come from, well, how do we get this thing open? Who forgot the batteries? How do we put it together? Because I bet the person, by the way, who read all the directions would have never forgotten the batteries. While the person who bought the gift was just so excited to look at the picture on the front of the box and how excited their kid would be to have it. You see, I want you to imagine just for 1 second what would happen if the person who had the vision walked over to the person who had the directions and said, actually, I'm going to take those directions from you, I'm going to rip them up, and then you're going to have to figure out how to do it my way. That's not going to work. Actually, that might be a divorce, pending divorce, if you were to do that to somebody who likes to put things together with directions. Take directions away from the person who needs them, and take the confidence away from the person who just has the vision and has the picture on the box. Both of those people are now incomplete, at least in their own minds. But it's funny because I think that's exactly what Jesus does in the story that I'm about to read from Scripture, where he's talking with the disciples or his followers, and while he's having this conversation with them, he kind of lays it out. And what he says is, you guys are the people who need the directions. maybe you don't need to be following them to a T the way that you think you do. And for those who have the picture on the front of the box, even if you have the picture on the front of the box, you really still don't know what's inside. You see, Jesus had just, this is in Matthew, in the middle of Matthew chapter, right before chapter 18, where we're going to be in 17, Jesus predicts his death for the second time, and he says, well, I'm going to die, I'm going to be hung on the cross, and the disciples still can't quite understand this or get this or believe this, because it would mean that everything that they put their life toward following this guy might come to an end. And all of the reasons that they were following this guy, some of them followed for self-interest and greed and personal power, at least at first. All of those things might go away. They might not have their dreams fulfilled. And so he predicts his second death. And then again, it's funny because he's kind of like tempted, or he's asked a question, and he's asked the question of, should a rabbi, who Jesus was, should a rabbi have to pay the temple tax? And the Jewish people were not okay with their Roman oppressors. And so that was meant to be a question to get people mad at Jesus. And he said, yes, actually, I'm going to call you to a third way. You don't have to agree with Roman oppression, but you can, in fact, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's. But then in chapter 18, at that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, so who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Now, if I was a betting man, I would imagine that whichever disciple asked this question was hoping and praying before he walked up to Jesus that his prayers would be answered, and he would say, well, disciples, it is Matthew, or it is John, or it is Mark, right? It is one of those 12 disciples, or even better, maybe they all conspired and got together and came to Jesus and said, so who's the greatest in the kingdom? And all of them are snickering under their breath because they just know that Jesus is going to say, why, you, of course. Why, my 12 disciples, my closest followers, confidants, and friends, you are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. But Jesus, in his Jesus-y way, gives an answer that's really just not so clear, and is the exact opposite of the answer that they want to hear. Jesus says, so at the time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, so who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? He called a child and had him stand among them. So I want you to just imagine being a grown man with all of your buddies, betting that you're going to be the one chosen as the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, snickering under your breath because you just know that Jesus is going to choose you. And then Jesus calls in a child to the center of this crowd. He says, truly, I tell you, mind you, the child's not just standing next to Jesus, the child is standing among them. Jesus has then made that child their equal. Unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child, this is the one that is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one child like this in my name welcomes me. What do you think about that? I mean, so I want to know what the disciples thought first off. The disciples are angry because they very much expected themselves to be chosen. Or at least that's a good prediction, that the disciples would have believed that. In fact, this is coming on the tail again of Jesus predicting his death. And so they're already talking about when Jesus is coming back and when they'll get to sit next to Jesus and when they're going to be a part of this earthly kingdom that's going to have military might that Jesus is going to bring into play when they're freed from Roman rule. And it seems like Jesus says, okay, well, not only am I not going to do that, not only am I going to bring in an earthly kingdom, and not only am I asking you to go ahead and pay the taxes to your oppressors and to focus on a kingdom that is not on earth, but also you're not the number one. This child is. This is where people often get the phrase that we should have a childlike faith. We should have a childlike faith. But the problem is, I think a lot of people often misunderstand what it means to have a childlike faith. You see, a lot of folks believe that a childlike faith is a faith that just, well, is like a child. It's childish. But there is a big difference between a childish faith and a childlike faith. You see, the problem is that even a childlike faith or a childish faith, people believe that, well, we should just be simple-minded. We shouldn't ask questions. We should accept things as they come. We should just believe that everything another Christian or someone else who says that they follow Jesus believes. We should just believe that because it's simple. We're having a childlike faith. But I don't think that that's it. I don't think that that's it at all. In fact, that type of childlike faith would be like the person who just follows the directions. It would be step 1, step 2, step 3. Or it could be like this, who says, well, it's very clear. The picture on the box is clear. This is exactly how we do it. This is how we be a Christian. This is how we be a Jesus follower. And both of those people would be sorely misled if that was their understanding of what a childlike faith was. In fact, I think that we're called to a third way. We're not called to follow the directions T by T by T because we don't have them. And we're not called to have all the confidence in the world that we know exactly what we're doing because we don't. But what we do have is the picture on the box. We know what Jesus looks like. We know how Jesus lived his life. We're called to love God and to love others and to love ourselves. And what that even looks like seems to change in this society day by day by day. We don't know how to do it, and that's okay. So if we don't know how to do it, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to be curious. We're supposed to ask questions. We're supposed to figure out how, in this day and age, in this moment, and whatever I'm dealing with today, how do I love God, love others, and love myself the best? Because I've got a picture on the box. I might not know how to put it all together, and I might not have step-by-step directions, but I've got a picture on the box. I know exactly what Jesus lived and looked like. I know how he lived his life, how he loved others, how he loved God, and how he loved himself. And I know that that's what I'm called to look like. And now I have to have the courage, hear me, the courage to realize that it's okay to not have directions and that it's okay to not know exactly how to do it. I have to have the courage to sit in curiosity. And so I think God actually calls us to have the courage to sit in curiosity. I actually believe that that's what faith is all about. Faith is something, mind you, that requires some assembly. Last week, Kevin talked about the free gift of the gospel that Jesus gave us, right? That we get to follow Jesus and it's free. And he calls us sons and daughters. That he calls us his children. And this week now we're talking about how, well, yeah, we got the free gift and now we've opened it up and we've figured out that maybe this is a little bit harder than we thought. Maybe following Jesus in 2023 isn't as simple as following Jesus would have been, well, in what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever, BC, right up leading up to Jesus' death, yet they still got it wrong, and Jesus corrects them by humiliating them, but they kind of deserved it, and says, hey, maybe your understanding of faith, following me for your own gain, isn't right. Maybe your understanding of faith needs to be more like this child who's curious and open to asking questions. In fact, Jesus goes on a little bit further, and he says, and this is a pretty damning statement, he says, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to fall away, it will be better for him if a heavy millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Woof. What is he saying here? He's actually saying that I know that you think that you've got it all figured out. I know that you think that you're one of the disciples who either has the directions or that you're one of the disciples who, well, not only has the picture on the box but knows exactly how to put this faith thing together. But maybe, just maybe, neither one of those things is really even possible when it comes to faith. Maybe faith starts just as simple as having the courage to believe. When Jesus says, who causes one who believes in me to fall away, he's saying, well, it's because you're heaping on all of these qualifications and instructions. And because you're telling them that you know exactly what faith should look like. You know exactly how to put it together. But this kid's just excited to open the box. because he can see the picture on the front and he thinks, how cool is that? And then he puts it together and he asks questions over and over again about how to do something. This is why I like to give kids back to their parents. I borrow them for a season and then I give them back. But they put their gifts together with their parents. So my dad used to put the gifts together and my mom would clean up the wrapping paper. And then they ask questions over and over and over. But guess what? Through all of their questions, from the moment they rip that wrapping paper off, they're excited about that picture on the front of the box. Through all of their questions, they're just excited about what's inside. Their questions, if anything, as they continue to have the courage to be in that curiosity, their questions, if anything, help them become more and more and more excited about their present. Right? It's one toy after a few days gets old, but one toy in an imagination works wonders because they have the courage to ask questions. Think about it. Imagine if every time you heard about or talked about or sung about or lived like Jesus, like that picture on the front of the box, that you were just so excited. And then every time you ask questions like, hey, how do I love people the way that I'm called to love them? And how do I serve people the way that I'm called to serve them? And how do I love myself the way that God calls me to? If that just energized and ignited us, what if that was the third way? What if the third way had nothing to do with following the directions or knowing exactly how to do it? This faith thing. But this third way saw the assembly that was required and just got excited. Said it's okay to not know exactly where I'm going or exactly how to do this thing, because I've got Jesus to look at and Jesus to live like and Jesus to love like. I've got a God who loves me and calls me to love him. And I've got a God who loves me and calls me to love myself, and that is all I need. We'll figure it out as we go. You see, God calls us to have the courage to sit in curiosity. And so if you're that person today who looks at those directions and needs to follow a step by step and is listening to this message and realizing, hey, maybe I need to be a little bit more curious. Maybe I just need to be more excited about the picture. If you think about it, the person who's following directions step by step and the person who knows exactly what they're doing when they're putting together that piece of IKEA furniture, they get in arguments because the person who's looking at the directions can't see the beauty of the picture on the front of the box that the person who knows exactly what they're doing sees. So what if we're not supposed to look at the directions? What if this isn't supposed to be some kind of instruction manual that tells us exactly how to live? What if instead we're just supposed to step into curiosity and to love God and to love Jesus and to love others? And if you're the person who thinks you know exactly what you're doing in this faith thing, well, you're kind of like one of those disciples, and Jesus actually just said, no, you don't know exactly what you're doing because the world is always changing, but I never change. You have to figure out how to apply my love for you and for others and for God onto your life. What would it look like if in your life you chose each and every day, no matter how difficult it might be, to step into curiosity walking with Jesus? To saying, I don't know exactly how it's going to work, God, but I know, God, that you're going to call me to love and to serve others today. Help me to not need directions or to act like I know exactly what I'm doing, but help me to lean into curiosity on how you're calling me to do that in this special way today. Would you pray with me? God, we're so glad that we get to be here. We're so glad for this Christmas season where we get to worship you in a new and exciting way, because each and every year we get so excited about December that we get to sing all of our Christmas songs and put up our Christmas tree and celebrate with our families. And God, we lit the peace candle today, and God, we pray that you would give us in this season that is so busy your peace, that our curiosity, God, would be just heightened in this season. As we see relatives that we haven't seen, as we run into people that we haven't seen in a long time, God, give us the courage to ask you how we ought to love them in that moment. And for those of us who have a hard time with the holidays because we can't see our families, God, give us the courage to not only love them from afar, but learn how to love ourselves in these tough times. And God, as we go throughout this Christmas season and into next year, each and every day, heighten our excitement for the picture on the front of the box. Heighten our excitement for the fact that we get to live and to love and to serve like you. God, we ask all of this in your holy, your heavenly, your strong name. Amen.
Well, I am definitely a follower of instructions. But this week, I'm going to try and take the cue from my lovely children. They have so many questions. They always ask them at the worst times as well. I'm constantly having to say, that is a great question. Can we talk about it afterwards? I'm going to be trying to ask more questions in a childlike way this week. So the songs may be finished, the prayers may be finished, but our time of community is not over yet, because today we have got potluck lunch. It's happening right now, out the doors and turn left, and we would love to chat with you and share some food with you after our service today. Coming up next week, next Sunday, is the Gainesville Big Band concert, and that's happening here next Sunday afternoon, so it's going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure. We would love to see you there. Also coming up this week, on Friday evening, we have our Connect group. That's when we all get together to play games from 6 until 8 p.m. Here at the church. So we would love to see you there. If you want to find out how to play cockroach poker or Santa Cookie Elf Candy Snowman Christmas game, then come and meet us here at 6 o'clock on Friday. If we don't see you before, we will see you back here, same time, same place, next Sunday. Thank you.